They didn't even let me sit before the question started. 10 alien delegates, each more smug than the last, staring at me like I was some untrained animal dragged in from the mud. The council hall stank of stale ozone and ego. The cry ambassador, some oversized mantis with silver robes and zero patience, leaned forward with that damn sneer on his bug face and asked, "Is it true, human commander, did your people really end the Taurian Velrax conflict in under 12 hours?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked around at the chamber. High marble walls, floating glyphs, translators humming. They spent centuries here, centuries debating peace, centuries trading blows through proxies and treaties that meant jack. Millions died while these elites drank glowing wine and debated ethics. And now they were shocked. No, offended because humans did what they couldn't end it. So yeah, I let the silence sit for a bit, let them sweat. Then I spoke, not just ended. Resolved permanently. The room stirred like I'd tossed a grenade into a nest of snakes. The Velra's delegate, all tentacles and glowing eyes, throbbed in fury. "You're lying. Our blood feud with the Taurians spanned 600 planetary cycles. You do not resolve that with a single fleet." I didn't flinch. We didn't use a fleet. That shut everyone up. The cry clicked. "Explain." I sat down finally, leaned back in the cold stone chair. "You people don't get it. You're so used to posturing, to dancing around war with shiny weapons and coded threats. Humans were built different. You see 6 centuries of war. We see 6 hours of opportunity." The truth was brutal, and I wasn't going to soften it for them. "First thing we did," I said, "was drop comms blackouts across both factions. No media, no propaganda, no reinforcement, just silence. Then we captured both warlords at the same time." Gasps and mutters rippled through the chamber. "We didn't negotiate," I went on. "We gave them a choice: sit at the same table or never see their people again." The Zarn delegate hissed, "That's coercion." "No," I shot back, "that's peace by any means. You've had 600 years to play nice. We gave them 6 hours to choose survival." They didn't like that. A few started whispering to aides, probably drafting condemnations, but none of them denied it happened. I stood up again and looked each of them in their alien eyes. "You call us barbarians. You laugh at how young humanity is in the galactic scene. But when your ancient wise civilizations couldn't stop bathing in blood, we end the damn thing before lunch." Silence. No one knew what to say, and honestly, I didn't care, because deep down they weren't horrified. They were jealous. I walked out of that council chamber with every set of alien eyes burning a hole in my back. They didn't applaud. They didn't thank us. They didn't even pretend to show respect. But they damn well knew the human presence had shifted something fundamental in that place. These species had evolved in separate corners of the galaxy, formed ancient alliances, built systems of conflict that sustained entire economies, even cultures around war. For them, peace was just a long pause between battles, and then we showed up. We didn't respect their cycles. We didn't worship their traditions. We weren't afraid of their history. What we respected was time, and how much of it was wasted in the name of diplomacy that never meant a damn thing. Dropship met me on the upper platform. Sleek black steel against the blue and gold skyline of Seldra Prime. Inside, Lieutenant Corbin stood at attention. Sir, he said, barely containing a smirk. Counsel looked rattled. They looked terrified, I corrected, brushing dust off my sleeve. They're used to wars feeding their pockets. We just starved them. Corbin handed me a data pad as we dropped into orbit. Transmission from Sol Command. They want a full debrief on Operation Iron. Silence. Already. I muttered, they can wait. Earth didn't send us out here to file reports, they sent us to clean up a galaxy full of ancient grudges. But I opened the file anyway. Human command was different. They didn't ask for updates because they doubted us. They asked because they knew this moment would be historic, and I guess I couldn't lie. Part of me wanted history to remember exactly how we did it. 3 days earlier, Operation Iron Silence wasn't approved through the usual channels. It didn't have time to be. We were supposed to be observers in the Taurian Velrax war, peacekeepers they called us. Another damn sticker on a useless name badge, but I saw the writing on the wall, a Taurian orbital strike had just taken out of Velra. Civilian colony, 80,000 dead, mostly children. The Velra warlords were prepping retaliation with a neutron wave, indiscriminate planetary burn. That was going to be it. No more proxies, no more diplomacy, just total annihilation. I stood in the war room with the human command squad, Corbin, Sergeant Vale, and Director Harlan, a non-nonsense intel officer who didn't flinch even when his own brother died in the last Velra skirmish. We act now, I told them. No warning, no negotiation. Vale raised an eyebrow. You're talking about abducting 2 heads of state on opposing sides, dragging them to a secure location and threatening them into peace. I didn't blink. Yes, Harlan smirked. You know what they'll call us. Don't care, I said, as long as they stop killing each other. The op itself was poetry. 2 human stealth teams, Black Echo and Wolf Hand, deployed simultaneously to the Taurian capital Spire and the Velrax Citadel of Flame. The Taurian leader, General Suctor, was midway through a war speech when our operatives cut power to his tower, stunned the guards, and tranquilized him mid-sentence. The Velra's supreme strategist, Lord Rasir, was worse. He had a private army and a dozen body doubles. Wolf Hand took 5 hours to get through them, but they did, using old-school methods the aliens never anticipated: thermal sig, deception, linguistic mimicry, biomask, infiltration, pure human creativity. At 400 hours saw time, both warlords woke up in a human mobile command unit stationed on neutral asteroid Delta 6, concrete walls, metal chairs, 1 dim light overhead, old Earth-style interrogation setup, no fancy tech, no luxury, just fear and silence. They thought it was torture. They expected threats. What they got was far worse: truth. We played them footage, not propaganda, raw, unfiltered images of what their war had done: burned children, starved civilians, soldiers executing prisoners, disease wiping out entire settlements. Then I walked in. You 2 are the last obstacle, I told them. We shut down your armies, froze your comms, hijacked your war factories. You've got 2 choices: sign a ceasefire or go back into the hole we pulled you from and never see daylight again. They didn't believe me until we showed them live footage, their militaries disarmed by coordinated drone strikes, and imps, human-controlled satellites, taking over their defense grids. Entire supply chains are rooted. Their empires were blind, powerless. They signed the treaty 6 hours later, not because they wanted peace, but because they realized humanity could do what no one else ever dared: shut down a war without asking for permission. Back in present time, Corbin leaned against the bulkhead. Council won't let this go. You just embarrass the most powerful political body in the galaxy. They embarrassed themselves, I said. All we did was show them. He nodded. Slowly, still, you've got a target on your back now. I didn't care. Let them come. The next day, Council held an emergency assembly. They called it an inquiry into unauthorized human intervention. But everyone knew what it really was. Witch hunt. I was summoned again. This time they tried to be clever. A tall, pale-skinned Dree official with eyes like knives leaned over the podium. Commander, humanity is overstepped. Your actions, though effective, bypassed centuries of galactic protocol. Your protocol protects war, I replied. We protect people. He scoffed. That is arrogance. No, I said, that's leadership. The room trembled with tension. The Velrax delegate surprisingly rose to speak. Let it be known, he rasped, that for the first time in my species history, our people are not dying. Cities are rebuilding. Food is flowing. We hated the Torthians, but now there is air to breathe. The Taurian general beside him, still bruised from his abduction, nodded. I do not like the humans' method, but I cannot deny the result. The council murmured, unsure how to process this, and that's when I realized something they didn't actually want peace. They wanted control. Wars gave them leverage. Peace meant surrendering it, so I delivered the final blow. We will not apologize, I said, and if necessary, we will do it again. Gasps, outrage, cries of tyranny and violation of interstellar law. I walked out without waiting for permission. Later that night, I stood on the observation deck of our cruiser. Earth glowed faint in the distance, just a blue marble among stars. Corbin joined me. They're scared of us, he said. They should be, I replied, not because we're violent, but because we're willing to end violence permanently. He handed me a glass of synth whiskey. Think peace will hold. I looked out at the stars. For now, but peace is fragile, and if these old powers try to reignite the flames, will be there, not with more speeches, but with solutions. Corbin raised his glass to iron. Silence. I clinked mine against his. To never waiting 6 centuries again. They didn't declare war on us. That would have been too honest. No, they council chose something colder, something older. Sabotage, isolation, undermining. First came the trade embargoes. Then the interstellar banking system started rejecting Earth's currency. Our embassies on over 30 neutral planets were suddenly under review. Even the communications network, the Galactic mesh, slowed human data traffic to a crawl. They couldn't beat us in open war, so they chose bureaucracy. But the real danger wasn't economic. It was internal, because while I was busy staring down the aliens in the council chambers, my own people were being picked apart back home. It started on Callisto 3, a minor human colony recently terraformed, barely 3 years old. Population roughly 120,000. Miners, technicians, kids, quiet place. Peaceful. One morning, every satellite went dark. Comms blackout. We sent a scout drone. What we found made my stomach twist. The entire colony was Gone, not bombed, not vaporized. Vanished. No craters. No heat signatures, no bodies, just absence. Our science team analyzed the terrain, traces of exotic energy. Readings, ion displacement, something had folded the colony out of existence. Not destroyed it, relocated it, or worse. I knew then this wasn't just council politics anymore. This was a message. I sat in my quarters, staring at the report, whiskey untouched. Corbin stood near the window, jaw clenched. They used phase tech, he said, something forbidden by over a dozen interstellar accords. Who? I asked. Which species? He didn't answer because we both knew it. Didn't matter. The council had denied us peace through politics. Now they were coming for our people through shadows. They want us to react, I said quietly. To lash out so they can point at us and scream. See, humans are violent. Corbin turned. We can't let this stand. Commander. No, I said, we won't, but we'll fight. This the same way we ended their war. Not through rage, through precision. I called an emergency session of the Earth Strategic Coalition. 12 of our top minds, military, intelligence, tech, psychology, no politicians, no diplomats, just people who understood results. Phase tech, Harlan said, pacing. Last time anyone used it, a third of the Valari species vanished into a collapsing dimension. This isn't a weapon, it's cosmic roulette, which makes it the perfect tool for untraceable war, I said. No evidence, no smoke, just disappearance and fear. We had to retaliate, but not recklessly. So we launched Project Iweir, not a fleet, not a weapon, an infiltration. We sent 10 human operatives, each surgically altered, linguistically trained, biologically masked, to embed themselves within the power centers of the 10 most influential species on the Galactic Council. Their mission was clear: gather intelligence, confirm who authorized the phase tech strike, and report back. If caught, they'd be disavowed. If they succeeded, we'd finally see the truth behind the Council's mask. 3 weeks passed. I didn't sleep much. On the outside, the Council was still pretending to operate as usual. Flowery speeches, public condemnations, empty calls for investigation. But underneath, the galaxy had turned cold. Other neutral systems started closing their ports to human ships. One of our diplomats was found dead, poisoned by a molecule that didn't even exist in our chemistry. They were tightening the noose. Then finally we got a signal. One of our embedded agents, call sign Harper, activated his distress beacon. Location: the Dravari core world. I knew what that meant. Harper had discovered something he wasn't supposed to see. We deployed immediately. I led the strike team myself. No suits, no human insignia. We went in black, off the grid, off the record. Dravari space was dense with sensor clouds, so we had to slip in through an old mining corridor. Took us 6 hours to crawl through it, silent as ghosts. What we found on the core world wasn't a weapons lab, it was a prison, not for criminals, for colonies. Callisto 3 was there, or rather what was left of it. Giant stasis pods, rows upon rows of frozen humans, packed like cargo, floating in a synthetic cryofog, hundreds of them, eyes closed, unmoving, alive barely. Harper was in one of the control rooms, bloodied and cuffed, but alive. They're collecting them, he rasped. Studying, experimenting, trying to figure out how humans think, how we act. They're scared. Of course they were. We didn't worship Hierarchy, we didn't negotiate ourselves. To death, we solved things that made us unpredictable, dangerous, uncontrollable, so the council wanted to dissect us until we made sense. We extracted Harper, took photographic evidence of the stasis chambers, and blew the lab to hell. No survivors, no apologies. The mission was a ghost op. Untraceable, unofficial, unacknowledged. But the council knew who'd done it. That's when the real war began, not with fleets, not with invasions, but with truth. We released everything, all the evidence, the kidnapped colonies, the illegal tech, the stasis experiments. We didn't beg the galaxy to believe us. We showed them, and for the first time the narrative cracked. Protests broke out on over 30 council-aligned planets. Non-human journalists, previously silent, started asking questions. Independent factions began pulling away from the council's influence. The illusion of order began to collapse. They tried to silence it, but they were too late. Back in my office, aboard the Resolute Dawn, I watched the reports stream in. Corbin walked in, grim as ever. They issued an arrest warrant, he said, for you. I nodded. Figures. He handed me a small device, encrypted command there, offering extraction, full diplomatic protection, retirement if you want it. I stared at the device for a long time. Then I crushed it in my palm. No, I said, we don't run, not when we've come this far. He didn't argue. We weren't diplomats, we weren't politicians, we were problem solvers. And the galaxy still had a lot of problems. That night I sat alone on the observation deck. The stars looked different, colder, sharper. We'd made enemies, but we'd also made something more powerful, fearless allies, species who saw the truth behind the council's curtain and stepped forward quietly, carefully, secretly. They didn't praise us, but they didn't try to stop us either, and that was enough, because peace isn't made in a conference hall. It's made in the silence after justice. They came for me at dawn, not with warships or assassins. That would have been too honest. No, they sent someone from inside. His name was Tyan, a senior diplomat from Earth, a man I'd once trusted, the kind of man who wore peace like a medal, but never once bled for it. He arrived under the pretense of negotiation aboard a neutral envoy shuttle. He smiled when he saw me, like nothing had changed, like we hadn't just uncovered galactic war crimes, like I hadn't blown a blacksite prison to hell with half the council's secrets inside. I came to talk, he said. No, you came to sell me out, I replied. He didn't deny. Earth's under pressure, he began, his voice too smooth. You've made us a target. Do you know how many trade alliances we've lost in the last month? How many colonies are being threatened? They were already targets, I shot back. You think Boeing will save them? Tyan took a deep breath, as if I was the one being unreasonable. There's going to be a tribunal, he said. A show of accountability. The council wants someone to take responsibility for Callisto, for Dravari. They want you. And what does Earth want to survive? He said quietly. That was the moment I realized something. Tyan wasn't afraid of the council, he was afraid of me. I didn't answer him, I just left, let Corbin deal with the politics. I had something more important to do, because Earth wasn't the only one cracking. The unity we built, the silent support of the smaller species was fracturing. Not because they stopped believing in what we did, but because they were being hunted. The Council had unleashed its oldest tool. The Null Order. Officially, they didn't exist. Unofficially, they were ghosts. Assassins, saboteurs wiped entire species from existence without a trace. And now, according to intelligence from Agent Harper, they were moving. Target Ronan 6, a neutral planet that had leaked Council surveillance logs to our network. If the Null Order reached them first, they'd wipe the planet like it never existed. I couldn't let that happen, so I ordered a black jump. No flags, no diplomatic clearance, straight into Ronan 6's atmosphere. We touched down in a frozen valley just outside the Ronan capital. Blizzard swept the cliffs and the skies had that eerie stillness that always comes before a kill. Corbin geared up beside me, his jaw locked tight. Satellite scans show thermal anomalies near the comms hub. Null strike pattern. They're already here, I said. We moved fast. Human recon suits, silent boots, weapons calibrated for atmospheric drift. No talking, just signals. Our squad had done this before, not for glory, but for the kind of peace you buy in blood. The comms tower was burning when we got there, not from bombs, from implosion charges, the kind that collapsed data cores from the inside out. The Null had already breached the data vault. Too late for retrieval, but not too late for a message. A Renani technician, maybe 17, maybe 20, stumbled out of the rubble, coughing black smoke. His eyes were wide with terror, frost clinging to his skin. They didn't take anything, he gasped. They left something. Corbin and I exchanged a look. We rushed inside. What we found wasn't a bomb. It was a body, human, stripped, burned, nailed to the vault wall with alien spikes, a warning on the corpse's chest, carved in some kind of plasma knife were 3 words: silence the flame. We exfiltrated with the Renani survivors, but the message was clear. The Council didn't just want to break our alliances, they wanted to make examples. This was more than retaliation. This was war without declaring war, and it was working. Dozens of previously neutral factions started pulling back. Some stopped answering our calls. Others began negotiating quietly with Council intermediaries. The galaxy was slipping again, back into fear, back into silence, and back on Earth. Division, Tyan and his political wing had rallied support from weak-kneed Earth governors who never saw the battlefield. They wanted to distance themselves from the rogue commander and his unsanctioned missions. A vote was coming. They wanted to strip me of authority. They wanted to hand over our command codes to a peace delegation. Corbin slammed the data pad onto the table. They're hanging you to save themselves. I lit a cigarette. Let them try. But deep down I knew we couldn't survive another fracture, not from within, so I did something I never wanted to do. I called her Era, my sister. She was one of the most powerful media figures on Earth, a voice that reached across cultures, planets, and systems, and she hated me. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since the day I left the family after Dad died, but I knew if anyone could speak to the people, it was her. She answered the call like she'd been expecting it. Well, she said, arms crossed. Look who remembers. He has blood. I need a favor, I said. I figured, she replied. You only ever call when the world's ending. I paused. It is, she studied me. No smile, no softness, just the way Mom used to look at us when we lied. You're not a hero, she said, But you're not the monster they're painting either. I'm not asking you to defend me, I said. I'm asking you to tell the truth. She stared for a long time. Then, finally she nodded. I'll record the segment tonight, her broadcast hit every system in under 12 hours, unfiltered raw. She didn't glorify what we'd done. She didn't sugarcoat the black sites or the stasis chambers or the way we force peace at gunpoint, but she told the truth. She showed the before and after, showed the children now playing in cities once burning, showed the markets reopened, showed the worlds that hadn't seen peace in generations now rebuilding. She ended it with one line that would echo across the stars. Maybe peace shouldn't be pretty, maybe peace needs teeth. The message caught fire. Every colony, every fringe world, everywhere. Species that had been too afraid to speak, they found their voice. Council tried to spin it, called it propaganda, but it was too late. Truth, once seen, couldn't be unseen. The tribunal vote never happened because 2 days later, the null order attacked Earth's moon base. No warning, no demands, just obliteration. Over 2,000 humans gone in seconds. This wasn't politics anymore. This was personal. I stood on the bridge of Resolute Dawn, watching the debris field orbit Luna like a graveyard halo. We warned them, Corbin said quietly. We tried to show the galaxy there's a better way. I nodded slowly. But now, I said, we stop asking. The council had crossed a line. They didn't realize what they'd unleashed. We weren't diplomats. We weren't an empire. We were humans. And we remembered how to end wars. We didn't hold vigils for the moon base. We didn't light candles or whisper prayers across silent halls. We armed up the day after the null order turned our moon into floating rubble. I called every off-grid operative we had, men and women, buried so deep the council forgot we even had them. Code names, ghosts, veterans of wars Earth never admitted to fighting. They didn't ask questions. They just responded with 2 words. Ready, Commander. Operation Ashfell wasn't a revenge strike. It was a recalibration of power. For too long, the council had controlled the narrative. Ancient, arrogant, elitist species who built their thrones on centuries of war, slavery, and manipulation. They wore peace like a crown, one they never earned, so we stopped treating them like gods. Asheville wasn't about killing. It was about stripping illusion. We hit 5 targets in the first week. Varrock 7, a neutral trade hub that quietly funneled weapons to the null order. We hijacked the station, exposed the manifests, and streamed the evidence. Live across council networks, Ektari, Banking Core, their encrypted servers held bribe trails going back 4 centuries, payouts to puppet leaders, false flag operations, sabotage. We didn't just steal it, we gave it away. Open source to every faction tired of being owned. The Krith Spire of Judgment, their sacred temple, was a front, a breeding ground for sleeper agents. Our men stormed it. No bombs, no bloodshed, just confiscation. For once we took without fire. We made a point. Orbital relay Omega-12, Council's largest interstellar propaganda beam. We didn't destroy it. We reprogrammed it, fed it every lie they ever told. Then juxtaposed the truth. Every screen, every planet, every citizen watched the mass crack. And then we hit Dravari Prime. This time it was personal. They called it the heart of order, a floating Palace carved into hollow widow. Asteroid marble halls, crystal domes. Sanctuaries for politicians who never set foot on a battlefield, the same council elite who signed off on Callisto's abduction, the same scum who funded the null. I didn't go in with it. Battalion, I went in alone, dressed like a diplomat, unarmed, escorted only by a single operative posing as a translator. They let me in, of course they did. I was a convenient villain now, a perfect scapegoat for the fear they couldn't contain. I walked right into their chamber. They stood in their polished robes, flanked by guards with ceremonial blades, trying to look superior. I looked around at all of them calmly and said, "Your war is over." The room burst into shouting, "You're insane. You have no authority here. You will be executed." I raised my hand slowly and activated the neural transmitter under my sleeve. The lights dimmed, holograms lit up. Across the ceiling, survivors from Callisto 3, children being pulled out of stasis pods, footage of null order units attacking Earth's moon base. Then silence. They watched their own crimes in front of each other on a loop. I walked right up to the Cry ambassador, the same bastard who tried to label me a war criminal 2 months ago, and whispered, "You thought you could control us, but humans don't follow your rules, we make our own." He reached for his blade, too slow. My operative disarmed him, dropped him to his knees, and pinned his throat to the floor. I didn't order his death. We didn't need to kill anymore. The truth was killing them faster. Back on Resolute Dawn, Corbin watched the fallout spread like wildfire. 3 species just withdrew from the council, he said, scanning the updates. 2 more cut diplomatic ties. They're bleeding out, I said, and they know it. We'd started something we couldn't walk away from now. The galaxy was waking up, and it wasn't just humans lighting the fire anymore. The Phila uprising began on the outer moons of Tyros, a small insectoid race bred as laborers under council law, never had rights, never owned property, couldn't even leave their birth colonies. But when they saw the truth broadcast through the hacked relay, they burned their minds, took their overseers hostage, declared themselves free. Council tried to suppress them, didn't work. Humans had been training them in secret since Asheville began, not with weapons, with ideas. They fought smarter, leaner, harder. 1 month later, the Tyro system was completely under Freyla control. Their message to the galaxy: if humans can rise, so can we. More followed. The Velrics, once bitter enemies of the Taurians, now signed their own Interesses pact, modeled after the human-led peace treaty that had started all this. The Urxan rebels, long hunted by the council for their ideology, declared their loyalty to the new coalition forming in our shadow. They called it the Free Accord. And they didn't wait for approval. They called for a vote, a declaration of independence, a direct challenge to the Galactic Council. They wanted to burn the old galaxy down and rebuild it with humans at the table. Earth was hesitant, still fractured, still unsure if we were becoming liberators or tyrants. So I went home, first time in years. Landed quietly in the outskirts of Berlin sector near the edge of the Atlantic Arc. Didn't make speeches. Didn't meet politicians. I went to visit Mom's grave. She died the year I joined command. Never got to see the world I helped change. I didn't cry, couldn't, but I sat there for a while, just me, her, and the Silence. Then I felt someone sit beside me. Era. She looked tired, hair shorter, eyes sharper. Thought you'd be too busy. Toppling galactic empires, she said. I chuckled. They're toppling themselves. Now she handed me a data chip. You need to see this. The footage showed something worse than anything I'd seen. Yet, not another war crime, not another massacre, but something quiet, a plan. The council wasn't trying to win the political war anymore. They were preparing to erase the board. They'd activated Protocol Zero, a contingency buried in the foundation of Galactic law. It was simple. In the event of widespread civil unrest, the Council reserves the right to initiate final reset. That meant orbital bombardments of rebellious systems. It meant biological warfare. It meant extinction. Not on us, on everyone who sided with us. Fellow Velrix Erkin, entire civilizations wiped because they believed in change. Corbin read the file, pale as snow. How long do we have? 2 weeks, I said. He looked at me. What do we do? I stared out the window at Earth's skyline. And for the first time in months, I smiled. We ended all of it. We called every contact, every friend, every rebel cell. We sent drones into council space, shadow fleets into restricted sectors, and cloaked operatives into command nodes. We didn't aim to kill. We aimed to cut off their arms, disable communications, crash their defense grids, hijack their AI controllers. One by one, the tools of their dominance fell silent. We didn't scream war. We whispered freedom, and the galaxy finally listened. The day Protocol Zero was triggered, 17 worlds went dark, not all at once, not like a grand declaration of war. No, it started like rot, quiet, hidden, a soft breakdown of systems. One world lost gravity, another lost breathable air. Another began hemorrhaging its own oceans into space, as if the planet had cracked open from inside. It was surgical, precise, and it was deliberate. We traced the signals. Deep code pulses buried in centuries old systems disguised as harmless updates. Emergency protocols, planetary fail safes, backdoors hidden by the Council in every civilization under its banner. No one had noticed, not until people started dying in silence. We don't have the numbers, Corbin said, voice low as he stared at the galaxy map. We don't have the reach. If we try to shield every world, will fail. Some will fall. It's math. I hated that he was right. The free accord was growing, but it was young, raw, ragtag fleets, half-drained militias, resistance fighters fueled by adrenaline and fury. Passion didn't stop orbital annihilation. We needed something else, something bigger, something that could reach every world before the kill codes finished executing. Ara walked into the war room holding a data pad. I might have something, she said. We all looked at her. She tapped the screen, brought up an image, not a weapon, not a fleet, a station, a relic. The Carrick engine was a myth, old Earth. Rumors said it was a deep space experiment buried before the collapse. Era, built to terraform entire systems. In days, failed because it worked too well, unstable, too powerful. Deployed according to Era's data. It wasn't a myth. It was real, and it wasn't a terraformer. It was a signal replicator. The engine could scan and amplify data across gravitational lanes. In theory, it could override the Protocol Zero command signals, shut them all down everywhere at once. Corbin leaned forward, squinting at the blueprint. This thing's been sitting dormant in the Kuiper fracture for 200 years, era. Nodded, unpowered, abandoned but intact. Why, I asked, why bury it? Because it scared even us, she said. The engine doesn't just transmit, it imprints, it rewrites. I looked at the map again at the systems blinking red, dozens of them, soon hundreds. Then I made the call. We take the engine. The Kuiper fracture was a nightmare. It wasn't just remote, it was dangerous. Graveyard of black holes, dark matter. Clouds, unstable time-lensing pockets. Navigating it was like flying through glass while blind. We sent Resolute Dawn in first, cloaked in alone. Corbin piloted manually, hands gripping the yoke like it owed him a favor. Took us 16 hours to reach the edge. Then we saw it floating among dead stars, tethered to nothing. Was a city-sized engine, silver fractal-lined, humming even after 2 centuries. No power, no crew, just a quiet pulse like a heartbeat waiting. Inside it was pristine, every corridor untouched by time, lights dim but responsive, systems dormant, not dead. Era led the tech crew, engineers, coders, old war hackers with more tattoos than teeth. They worked in silence, fear hidden behind adrenaline. This wasn't just tech, it was forbidden knowledge, the kind of machine that made lesser species ban experimentation outright. But we didn't have the luxury of fear anymore. We powered it up. Carrack engine roared to life, not with light or flame, but with gravity. The station didn't light up, it bent space around it. Made your bones feel heavier, made your ears hum. It's alive, Era whispered. Good, I said. Now make it scream. As Era's team uploaded the override protocols into the engine's core, the council moved. They knew they'd monitored the fracture, had always feared someone might rediscover the old weapons buried in the dark, so they sent everything, a Reaper fleet, hundreds of ships, null order flagships, council dreadnoughts, biocruisers older than Earth's calendar. Corbin stared at the scanner. They'll be here in 6 hours. I looked at the engine. Only 28% ready. We'd never make it unless someone bought us time. I stood before the crew of Resolute Dawn, every soldier, pilot, comms officer, janitor, all of them packed into the hangar bay. You already know what this is, I said. They're coming. And they're not here to capture, they're here to erase. No one spoke. They think if they burn this station, the protocol goes on. They think they can finish their purge. I paused. They're wrong. I stepped back. And behind me, a wall of holograms blinked to life, live feeds of Accord World, fellow rebels arming stations, Velry's cruisers activating their shields, Irken generals rallying ground troops, and then one by one other species began appearing, neutral systems, independents, even council aligned worlds who'd had enough. They weren't asking anymore. They were ready to fight. Today, I said, we don't fight for Earth. We fight for the galaxy we deserve, one where peace isn't dictated by monsters hiding behind diplomacy. Then I gave the order. All forces, defend the engine. They came like a storm. The Reaper fleet dropped out of warp in perfect formation, black holes reflecting the engine's glow. No hails, no warnings, just death. Their first salvo took out 3 escort ships. 4th detonated before it could return fire, but we were ready. Corbin launched Ragnarok protocol, a counter-assault plan designed to sacrifice everything if needed. We opened with EMP shells, disrupted their front ranks, then came. The orbital mines detonated in sequence, forming a wall of fire across the engine's perimeter. We took losses, heavy ones, but we held. Era screamed into comms. Override at 74%. They're trying to cut. Uplinks rerouting. Someone get me more juice. I turned to our lead technician. How long if we burn the core manually? He palled. 30 minutes, but it'll fry the signal relays. One shot's all we need. I knew then that I wouldn't make it out. That didn't matter because we weren't the story. The worlds were. The children of Callisto. The rebels on Tyrus, the orphans of Velrax. We were just the spark. They were the flame. Corbin called out from the bridge. Engines charged, signal ready. Era looked at me. Final command, Commander. I nodded. Lighted up. She slammed her palm on the console. The engine pulsed. Once deep and violent, and then unleashed a wave of white fire shot across subspace, every comm tower, every signal repeater, every planetary mainframe lit up. The protocol tried to resist. It failed. The engine didn't just override it, it replaced it with one command: stand down, you are free. From orbit we watched. Council dreadnoughts began powering off, their cores shutting down mid-flight. Planetary death systems went silent. Biovirus canisters vaporized harmlessly. In containment, the purge stopped. Everywhere. At once. The Council didn't fall in a blaze of glory. It crumbled. Within days their networks collapsed. Internal revolts. Military defections. Species demanding justice, not peace. Justice. Back on Resolute Dawn, we buried the dead. Thousands of them. No music, just silence, the kind earned in blood. Corbin stood beside me, bruised, exhausted. We did it, he whispered. No, I said, staring at the stars. They did, because humans didn't save the galaxy. We just reminded it that it deserved saving. Victory doesn't sound like trumpets. It doesn't smell like roses or shine like gold. It smells like scorched metal and burned flesh. It sounds like screams that finally stopped. It looks like silence, the kind you feel when you've survived something the rest of the galaxy thought would kill you. And now the dust had settled. The protocol was dead. The Council was fractured. The galaxy had 1,000 open wounds, and everyone was staring at us, waiting, wondering what humans would do now that we'd won. We didn't have an answer because this wasn't a war we could end with a bullet. I stood on the bridge of Resolute Dawn, watching the cleanup fleet move through. The remains of the Reaper Armada, the biggest ships, were drifting husks now, being towed out of the Kuiper fracture for dismantling. But something felt wrong. Corbin came up behind me, still limping from shrapnel in the last fight. We found a Council vessel buried deep in the wreckage, he said, intact, cloaked. Looks like it tried to hide during the final assault. What's inside? I asked. He handed me data pad. Prisoners, he said. The ship was called the Century Ark, a Council containment vessel. Euphemism for something much worse. Inside were hundreds of stasis pods. Non-human, non-aligned species that weren't even on the Galactic registry anymore, extinct supposedly. Turns out the Council hadn't wiped them out. They'd preserved them as bargaining chips, as weapons, as research. Some had been frozen for centuries. Most wouldn't wake up sane. And in the back of the hold, isolated from the rest, was something we hadn't seen before. A human, unregistered male, maybe 40. His file said only one word: Obsidian I had. The pod transferred to a secure bay on Resolute Dawn. Era met me there flanked by two medtechs. Who is he? She asked, scanning the frozen figure. No idea, I said, but the council kept him isolated from everything else. Whatever he is, they were afraid of him. She frowned. You want to wake him? I nodded. We didn't fight for peace, just to keep new prisoners. But even as I said it, I felt something off. The man in the pod didn't look starved or pale. His muscles were tense. His body healthy, no decay, no cryo fatigue, almost like he wasn't frozen at all. We initiated the thawing process. Standard protocols, minimal interference, med team on standby. The chamber hissed open, and the man opened his eyes instantly. No confusion, no disorientation, just focus. His voice was calm, flat. Which faction commands this vessel? Human, I said, stepping forward. You're on Resolute Dawn. Protocol 0 has been terminated. The council is finished. He studied me, then smiled faintly. Then the galaxy has entered its next phase. I didn't like the way he said that. Who are you? I asked. He didn't answer. Just looked out the observation window. Stared at the stars like he recognized them. Then he said something I didn't expect. I designed Protocol 0. We locked him down immediately. Bio sensors, AI monitors, 2 armed guards on rotation, but he didn't resist. Didn't speak for 24 hours. When he finally did, it was only to a "You want the truth?" He told her, "You deserve it." She recorded everything. His name wasn't Obsidian. That was a council code name. His real name was Grant Vesser. Earthborn, a prodigy in pre-collapse cognitive warfare, recruited at 17 into a think tank called Glasslight, funded by early Earth Council cooperation. His job: model interstellar conflict scenario, design tools for controlled stability. He created Protocol 0 not as a weapon but as a fail-safe. If diplomacy failed, he explained, the galaxy needed an automated solution to prevent collapse, something impersonal, something absolute, clean, efficient. Only the council twisted it. Instead of using it to suppress conflict, they used it to eliminate opposition. I tried to stop them, Besser said. They locked me up instead. Corbin listened to the logs with a clenched jaw. So the council's worst weapon was built by a human? I nodded. No wonder they buried him. But it wasn't just what Vesser said, it was what he implied. There's another protocol, he told us. Deeper, older. We leaned in. Vesser tapped the console and brought up a schematic. It looked like a star chart, only it pulsed. I called it Protocol Genesis. It's not a weapon, he said. It's a reset, not of systems, of species. A biological contingency designed to restructure galactic intelligence in case of ideological contamination. In simpler terms, if the galaxy ever united in rebellion, Genesis would trigger, wiping all intelligent life via preceded DNA-based kill switches. Council had buried it in ancient biotech, in the water, in the food chains, in the gene mods handed out like candy during the expansion era. Every major species carried part of the code. But humans were different. Because when the council first approached us, they didn't fully trust our biology. We never got the complete integration treatment. We were immune. We ran tests, confirmed it. Vesser was telling the truth. The council had hidden a final kill switch, and it was already activating, slow, untraceable, targeting neural decay and reproductive Failure over decades. A clean wipe, an extinction plan that looked like evolution. Why now? Corbin asked. Because you've unified the galaxy, Vesser said. That was the trigger condition they feared. Disorder more than genocide. Ira slammed her fist into the wall. All this, and we're still not done fighting. I looked at her, at Corbin, at Vesser. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. We hadn't won, we just peeled back the first mask. I called in emergency accord assembly, 12 species, 44 delegates. We laid it all out. Truth, the threat, the timeline. Silence followed. Some cried, some cursed. A few accused us of fabricating it, but in their eyes I saw it, fear deep, existential, the kind that burns worlds. Without firing a shot, the Velries general stood. My people cannot fight this, not with fleets, not with fire. I looked at him. You don't have to. I turned to Era. Tell them what Vesser said. She stood composed. There is a counter sequence, she said, embedded in human DNA. The Council never cracked it. It can overwrite the Genesis signal. More silence. You mean the frail? A delegate buzzed. You can save us. No, I said we can share it. That decision changed everything. Humanity, once feared, hated, isolated, now held the key to survival, not through war, through blood, gene sharing, biological grafting, voluntary splicing of human immunocodes into other species populations, slow, risky, but real. For the first time, the galaxy looked to us not as soldiers, but as shepherds. We renamed the Karak engine. The Arcspire, turned it into a living lab, a sanctuary of science and healing. Part temple, part forge. The birthplace of the second galaxy. No more councils, no more protocols, just species learning from one another. Because they had to. Because survival was now a choice, and it started with trusting humans. Funny how far we'd come. Late that night I stood on the Arcspire's outer ring, staring into the abyss of space. Vesser walked up beside me. You could have used it, he said. The immunity, built your own empire. Held it over them. I nodded. I thought about it. He waited, but we didn't come out here to rule, I said. We came out here because we were tired of dying for other people's lies. He smiled. You think they'll keep trusting you? No, I said, but they'll keep surviving. That's enough. Because peace isn't made in palaces. It's made in the wreckage, in the fire, in the silence after the war. 5 years later, the galaxy had changed. The Arcspire now orbited what used to be the Council capital. The once pristine world of Dravari Prime had become a living reminder, not of ruin but of rebirth. Across dozens of systems, the Protocol Genesis crisis had been averted, not with guns but with blood. Humanity's immunity became the backbone of a new generation, one born free of the Council's genetic chains. But peace is never permanent. It lingers in the air just long enough for people to believe it's real. Then it's stolen by secrets buried too deep for comfort. I had retired, or at least I tried. They gave me a quiet post, Earthside, overlooking the Atlantic Arc where I grew up. Corbin had taken command of Resolute Dawn. Ira had been appointed director of the Accord Council, the first human to ever lead a multi-species government without war behind her name. Things were good until the message came. It was a simple transmission. Untraceable, clean, just one line. Council was not the beginning. I flew back to the Arcspire personally. I Didn't bother asking permission. Some places and some ghosts you answer to. Directly, Vesser met me on the outer deck, same grim look on his face. I hoped you'd ignore it, he said. Why? Because if it's true, we're not at the end, we're at the middle. I followed him to the data chamber. It was quiet, pulsing with low hums of the engines. Dormant core. There he showed me something he should have told us years ago, a file redacted, hidden deep in the root coding of Genesis, older than the Council's charter, older than most species' historical timelines. It was titled Patron Protocol, and it was human. According to the metadata, the file had been created over 12,000 Earth years ago, long before humanity had reached the stars, long before we had even built cities. Impossible, I muttered, but the data was real: images, logs, genetic footprints. Something someone had seeded the foundation of the Council's biotech protocols before the Council even existed. It hadn't started in the stars. It had started on Earth. We traced the data trail to an ancient satellite wreck, found orbiting a gas giant in the Zarnoth system, a region thought to be uninhabitable and long abandoned after a starquake centuries earlier. The satellite wasn't alien, it was human. Old Earth logo on the hull, half erased. Titan seeding initiative. Phase 1 horn. We recovered the core, and what we found changed everything. The satellite wasn't just an artifact. It was a lab. Inside were preserved logs, cryopreserved brains, and genetic archives dated to the Paleolithic age. Humans hadn't just discovered the Council, we had built the systems that made them, not intentionally, not maliciously. Back then Earth was dying: climate collapse, resource wars, genetic experiments run amok, some secret division long erased from public history had launched a last-ditch effort: seed the stars with code, not just data. Culture, habits, belief structures, authority protocols. The idea was simple: create frameworks of stability wherever life took root. It worked too well. Over time, those frameworks evolved into something else. The Council. They were the distant echo of an Earth experiment that never ended. And now the creators had come home, us. I sat in silence, trying to process it. Corbin paced, pissed off as always. So we're the reason half the galaxy ended up enslaved and twisted. Era was quieter. We didn't do it, a version of us did. Vesser simply watched me. You see what this means, he said. The war didn't start with them, it started with us, and we never even knew. It explained so much: why humanity had always felt different, resisted their methods, thought faster, fought harder. Why we never bent to the Council's control, not fully. We weren't outsiders, we were originators, and that meant one thing: there was no one else to blame anymore. The Accord held an emergency summit. Delegates screamed. The Velrics accused us of deception. The Fila demanded reparations. The Urkin wanted Earth declared a neutral breeding world for all species to study. Everyone was panicking, not because of what we did, but because of what it meant: that humanity might have been behind all of it by accident or by design. I stood before them, old uniform clean, voice steady. I didn't create this. Neither did any of you, but we inherited it, all of it, and that means we own it. Now we can pretend it didn't happen, or we can finally accept that peace will never come from denial. I pointed to the stars. Out there somewhere are the remnants of those who started this experiment, Or, worse, others like it, more protocols. More systems waiting to activate. I looked each of them in the eye. Let's go. Find them first, so we did. We formed the Veil Initiative, a coalition of science, intelligence, and exploration, tasked not with war but with uncovering what else the past had left buried, old machines, old threats, old truths. The galaxy wasn't just dangerous because of what it held, it was dangerous because of what we forgot we created. On my last day aboard the Ark Spire, I visited the engine's core one last time. Era joined me. We're not soldiers anymore, she said. No, I replied, we're gardeners. She looked at me confused. I smiled. War tears things down, peace tries to hold things together, but gardeners, they choose what grows. She nodded slowly. And what about the weeds? I shrugged. We pull them again and again, until the ground learns to fight back. Later, Corbin and I sat under the false stars of the biosphere. He poured us both a drink. To peace, he muttered. I raised my glass to truth, however ugly it gets. We drank in silence, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning.